up there, and then we'll have a common list of priorities. I was going to suggest that if you want to turn around this way, then nobody feels bad about going up to get a cookie.
Cookies are us.
Got to make it easy to get another little bit of sugar there, don't we? You know, Paul, I just can't help but add to what you said about the support that goes from the state and the county to our kids in college. And then some of them can't find employment and have to go out of state in order to make their livelihood. We had a child in that situation. And it really, really does hurt. She was a graduate from OSU, had wonderful background, great experience in college, but had to leave Oregon. So I know just what you're talking about, and it's not good. And that's another thing I'd like to tackle on the federal level, by the way, because we can come at it in many different directions, in many different ways. Well, some of you know me all too well at this point, and some of you not at all. I thought I'd just begin by introducing the stranger in the room, who's back here at the back. He knew exactly who I was talking about. Is it Jeff?
It is.
See, I haven't seen you for a while. He's a representative from the Democrat headquarter group, and comes around, looks at candidates, what they're saying, so it can be fed back into their system. So I see this bad guys. Yeah.
You got filters on that camera?
Yeah.
So you can go in there, take pictures, distort them as necessary.
Yeah.
Just wanted to be clear.
And if John's standing up there like this, we'll know why. Is that the idea? No, I just thought that all of you would want to know that.
But he was afraid to take it.
Yeah. Probably a wise move there, huh? Well, some of you know me all too well and some not at all, as I started to say, so I thought I would just begin by giving you a little bit of my background, which is Earl's background too, because he's put up with me for 34 years, so our backgrounds are pretty darn close at this point in our lives. And then I'll talk a little bit about why I'm running, and then I'd like to throw some issues out to you to just kind of see where you are on some things, because I always like to do that in a group where we actually have a little bit of time to talk. Candidates are used to getting 2 minutes. Thank you, John.
You're welcome.
It's wonderful because this way we can actually communicate. I really do like that a lot. And then I'd be happy to share with you where I stand on absolutely any issue at all. I grew up in Kansas, so I'm a Kansas girl. I was born, are you too?
No, in Nebraska.
Nebraska.
Kansas.
I know somebody from Kansas.
Do you know her?
Oh.
Oh, yeah, that's true. That is true. Didn't know her. Did not know her. I worked at a little place I rented that was called Kansas Farmer Magazine. And that's where I started paying Social Security when I was 15 years old. And I remember getting those checks, and at the end of the year, I saw how many hundreds of dollars went into Social Security, and I thought, wow, I'm going to be so rich. Little do we know as kids, right, what this is really all about. And you see that grow over the years. But anyway, if you ever can imagine a candidate who cares a lot about Social Security as an investment, that happens when you've been paying it for so long as I have. So anyway, then I went to undergraduate school in Kansas as well. And I remember the first thing that I bought with the money that I earned, I bought a transistor radio, and then I saved the money for, and that was a big deal, saved the money to pay my mother's house payment, her last 2 house payments. And I was so pleased to do that. And I don't know how, but somehow I think that kind of defines me. I still have my grandmother's treadle sewing machine that I made most of my clothes on through high school. And what I used to do as a kid, my favorite toy, you know those old treadles? I would take it apart, and I would have to put it back together before my mother got home from work, or I'd get in big trouble. Not that she could sew or put the sewing machine back together, but that was my entertainment. And I just thought that was so much fun, because it got to be kind of a speed thing too. You take it apart, and how fast can you get the thing back together? I don't know what that says about a candidate, but something, I'm afraid. So anyway, then I ended up at Texas A&M, and that's where I got a doctorate in administration. And after that, I said, hi, good to see you. We almost stopped by at the cleaners. Yes.
You know what that says about you, that sewing machine?
Tell me.
That was the beginning of Don't Treadle on Me.
Very good, Bob.
I like it. Earl, would you write that down? I don't want to forget it. That's just great. Oh, my. Don't you love it?
Get a picture sitting with your sewing machine and the caption underneath.
Yeah.
Don't treadle on me.
I really do like that. Well, so anyway, once I got that doctorate, I thought, well, now do I want to go into business or go into the university world? And Earl was hired about that time because he was in agriculture at California State University, Fresno, in the agriculture area. And I thought, well, if he's going to be at the campus, then I will be too. And so on that short stopover to work in higher ed, 32 years later, I retired in the same system. So that's been my life. It's steady as you go. You know, it was the single employer, although a couple of different universities. My life, though, within the university was being dean of a business school. And a lot of people say, in higher ed and you're a conservative? You bet. That's just the way it works in business. You get a certain way of linking with the community and working for business issues, and you can end up a conservative and see light in the right way, you know. Just it's a good experience as the opportunity to link the community, the government, and the students. And that's what we did. And by the 3 months before I retired, because we emphasized entrepreneurship and innovation within the college, I said, what I really want to do is get some recognition of this college for the things that we've accomplished with the business community. And so we were ultimately named one of the top 18 in the world for innovation. And I was really proud of that because in San Bernardino, if any of you have been there, it's most known for its smog. You know it. and it's not known for being a wealthy campus, having students from wealthy backgrounds, none of that. It's a very multicultural campus. The demographics there are not wealthy at all. So to have accomplished that in that particular arena, I felt really, really proud. But our goal had been to come to Oregon because of criteria that we set for what we wanted to have for the rest of our lives, and also because of our kids graduating, one from OSU and one in law school at the University of Oregon now. And our son had been in Intel for 15 years in Oregon. He retired from Intel not that long ago, 3 years ago. But he wanted to come so badly to Oregon too, that he had just had the luck and good fortune of kind of being in the right place at the right time with the company, and so he had said, I want a virtual job and I want it to be in Bend, Oregon. So he had that same love of being here too, and brought his family. So we've got 4 children and 3 grandchildren, and the only one who's very far away is in Boston. So she's, you know, many an hour plane ride away, which I don't care for at all. But that's pretty much my background. So what I would like to do now is to apply all of this love of the business community, support for the business community, knowledge of the business community to the governmental sector because it needs it. What I'm feeling is that spend, spend, spend. I'm seeing from our incumbent, I point to you, Jeff, sorry.
Get to the avatar.
I see the votes for big government with a capital B, you know. I see the vote for stimulus package. I see the vote for Obamacare. I see the money just moving, and I see the debt just moving the wrong direction and deficit spending moving the wrong way. And that is something that, by golly, we can get a handle on if we don't vote that way. We've got to stop voting that way. We've got to say, what's our priority here? What's the vision that we see for America? What is it? Is it going to be bigger government and more spending and pass over a country that's just suffering to our kids? No way. No way. We can't afford to do that. So if you've got the vision, then we've got to behave in line with that vision, right? Don't go off here to get yourself all off track, because you're getting further and further and further away from that vision. And that's the problem with the folks that we see, the votes now that are getting us where we are. So some people say, well, as a freshman congressman, someone who's never run for office, why in the world would you want to do that? It's because I think they're not doing very well. And I think we need to get there to fix it. I just think it's real clear what needs to be done, and not be tempted by this additional spending or this additional spending, or heaven forbid, this additional regulation. And when I look at those regulations, it just makes me ill. It doesn't matter who I'm talking to. If I say something about egg bills, or the rotten egg bill as it's called now, would you know what I'm referring to? No? Well, there's a bill that has been sponsored that is designed to regulate how hens would have their space in the, in the what do you call it, cage?
Yeah.
In the cage. Some people want, okay, let me ask you, some people want freewheeling space for those chickens for certain reasons, for those hens for certain reasons. Some of them say, well, it probably ought to be regulated by the federal government, because that way all hens throughout the United States will have equal rights. Maybe, that's what they're thinking. Or is it something that the federal government just ought to get out of and let free enterprise take care of? Or is that a state's issue? Where are you on that? Is it a free enterprise thing?
Karen,
Yeah?
last session, Oregon already passed that.
Yeah, now we're talking federal though, too.
Yeah, but Oregon already has them.
And the sponsor was, for the federal level?
I don't know.
Take a guess.
Kurt,
But I bet it was Kurt.
It was. Yeah. So things like federal regulations on any industry, is not the kind of thing that I stand for. That's the bottom line.
One thing that he forgot to calculate was the cost per egg, and how they astronomically increase as you require those egg growers to expand that space. I mean, it's unbelievable how expensive that is, and guess who will pay for it?
Me.
You will. Not me, I don't need eggs.
$12 a dozen.
And then I talked to the farmers in a place, or not the farmers, the fishermen in a place like Tillamook, which is a part of this district too, as you see on that little map on the front side. And there they have another problem with regulations. It's also too many, but too many of a different kind, where they'll report having maybe 17 different regulatory agencies over their waters. And those 17 agencies don't work together, so of course they are in conflict with each other. And they'll have differences of agreement on just about everything. And they've got so many laws to enforce, and I read some of them, and there's another story on that they really and truly don't agree and think that the other guy is wrong from the other federal agency. And so in the end, who's caught? It's just like you paying $12 for your egg. It's the fishermen. Sometimes they'll say, we don't know where to fish. We don't know what to do with the fish that keeps us from having to pay a fine at the end, etc. It's absolutely awful. I looked at some of those EPA regulations that are over the waters over there. And I'm pretty good at reading regulations. And I tell you, it was really squeezy in terms of clear interpretation. And so if the regulators are unable to read them in the same way, no wonder they're in conflict with each other, and no wonder the fishermen are caught. And then we know how the federal regulations are with regard to the O&C lands, and how we've got to do major work there. There's talk about a bill that is maybe going to come forward that is sponsored by 3 folks from Oregon, including Schrader. But the people in the industry are saying this isn't going to even touch the problems that we have, because they are so deeply rooted as far as needing a plan in order to go forward. So one of my absolute joys when people say, well, what else, what kind of laws are you going to work on? What are you going to pass? Is to get rid of this stuff. And as much as we possibly can, and not just the laws, but the very confusing agency interpretations of those laws that are very difficult. Thank you. We need help. We need help in that regard. I've started keeping a chronology of local business people who have either had to dramatically change their businesses, or go out of business, or move out of Oregon because of things that were happening here. And when I see those things happening, I go, why? You know, why have we allowed ourselves to get in this position? There are a lot of reasons why, and we've just over time kind of inched into that and let it happen. And because of that, we see Oregonians now having average wage that is really declining relative to our neighborhood states, even California, even Washington. It's sad to see that occur, and it doesn't really need to be. But the stories of some of these business people are just horrifying. Like there was one man that I talked to who made little cheerleader skirts. Interesting business. And he loved where he was, in a little shop with surrounding of fabric, beautiful fabric that he had milled here, or wove, whatever you call it here, whatever Pendleton does. and he loved his business. And he said one day when I walked in, I'm going to have to move to Nevada. And of course, what was he doing? He was getting ready to hire 2 people. He had been sole proprietorship. Now that's the kind of business that we want here, because he's starting to expand. But instead, with tax upon tax upon tax, he had to leave the state. And I've talked to family businesses that have been inundated by death tax, with the federal death tax on top of the state death tax. And in fact, I want to mention that to you in a moment if you are maybe not involved with that yet at this point too. So you see people leaving for all kinds of reasons, or going out of business for all kinds of reasons. I talked to a man last night who had some wood milled at a certain place where he could pick the stand of trees. And he loved that opportunity to go and just really do it the whole way, and then he would have the exact wood with the exact look to it that he wanted. Now he has to buy his wood from China because of a variety of things. The mill that he had used is out of business. The cost got out of hand, etc. So that has had to be what he's had to do, while he also cut the number of employees he had from 80 to 14. We got to get away from that, don't we, in order to be thinking jobs, jobs, jobs. So when I think about what is it we need to do from the federal level for jobs, 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 it certainly starts with regulations to free enterprise. Because until we free that free enterprise, we aren't going very far. And then there are the obvious things that I think tie in there too, with making us energy independent. And I heard again today that the president is probably going to veto the Keystone Pipeline opportunity for the northern part of that pipeline if it does come to him, in fact. And there's getting to be some bipartisan support for that Keystone because of the knowledge that people have that it will bring jobs and it will bring them in a domino effect throughout the United States. So even though they've rerouted that pipeline a little bit, doesn't come through Oregon, it would have positive effects on us. And it would have positive effects. Does anyone here think that gasoline and diesel could just come down a little bit more? I mean, Earl has a diesel truck, a Ford. He loves that truck, but we don't love to fill it anymore. It's over $100 now. Gee, I mean, it's just out of control.
It's parked. I had to park it.
Like driveway ordinance.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I said I would mention the death tax to you, and this is a little bit of an aside, except for the fact that there's federal legislation, and this one is legislation instead of a petition, that matches what I'm going to say now. The federal death tax is right now in the 30s with the proposition for it going to the above 50% by about a year and a half from now. So that gets to be significant for our heirs if there is property to be passed on. Well, I'm the spokesperson for the Oregon death tax phase out. And I brought petitions with me because I thought some of you might want to sign it while you're here or take one with you and have other people in your family sign it as well. Maybe those heirs would like to sign it as an example. But what it does is to phase out our death tax in this state over a 4-year period so that by 2016, January 1st, there would be 0 death tax in Oregon. And by that, the petition is referring to inheritance tax or estate tax, as well as what's colloquially known as death tax. And then the main benefit of this, we were talking about jobs, and that's why I was thinking about it, is jobs. Because here's what happens. When the heirs need to pay the cash to the government in the form of that death tax, too often they don't have liquid assets. They have their money tied up in machinery or equipment or facility or whatever, depending on their business. And so they have to liquidate those assets in order to pay the cash to the government within a specified amount of time. And by that time, the business is virtually gone. And so what happens to those heirs who were counting on that company for their employment and their jobs? Jobs are gone. So it's estimated that in Oregon, that would save, being rid of that death tax would save another 44,500 jobs. That's significant in our state, just from that one thing. And it accounts for only 1.5% of our overall revenue. So it's not particularly significant as a revenue generator for the state, but it's very significant as just family just pulled apart by losing its family farm, family business, whatever they owned. So at any rate, I do have those with me.
Question, how did the death tax ever get started in the first place?
You know, that's...
When you think about the fact that the taxes were paid on the income that was earned,
Yep,
to buy the farm,
yep.
start a business, taxes paid on all of that.
Yeah, it's a definite double tax, isn't it? Well, in 2001, all 50 states had a state death tax. Today, 20 do. So 30 states in that time period saw the light to get rid of it. Oregon has not yet done so. And we tried to get a particular immediate phase out done, but the wording of it wasn't approved by the Supreme Court. So this one, the Supreme Court of Oregon. So this is the one that we got approval on, so that's why it's a phase out rather than an immediate thing. But you're right, it's a double tax. And then you look at the federal tax and it's a triple tax in a way.
Oregon's only have a $1 million exclusion, whereas the federal right now is $5 million, $5.4 million.
And those numbers have changed over the years.
Oregon hasn't changed at all.
And
So basically inflation is basically dropped it in half. Well, I mean, so basically, you know, it's only been $1 million, I think, since about 19.
well, another change though that was made recently, which was a good change in Oregon, is that it is $1 million exclusion. So it used to be, if you had $1 million, no, if you had 999,000, you were safe. If you had $1 million, then you paid the full tax. But
Yeah.
at least we had the wisdom to get rid of that, I think just last year or so.
Yeah, it was just last year.
So, anyway, that's something that if you want to sign, I've got it with me, I've got a bunch of them here, and you can just sign tonight, and you can take a petition with you too. And I think that'll be something that means a lot for jobs in our state, means a lot for individual families at a really hard time in their lives, when the heirs don't want to have to deal with that.
So should we ask him what Mr. Schrader's position is on it?
He's not gonna answer. You need to ask Mr. Schrader, I think.
He won't answer either. He's already
Yeah,
inherited
he
his
won't.
millions.
Some people filled one out, they got so excited they filled in between the lines, is that gonna be legal?
Between the lines, I think you need to take them another one.
Okay, so will that be just thrown out then, that piece, or will that whole thing be?
Do you know where it is? I'd throw it away, if you
I've
can.
already sent it in.
You sent it
I
in?
sent it back to whoever sent it to me.
Well, then let's just let it go and not run the risk of there being two, which again, the Secretary of State's office might very
Okay,
well
so
throw
I
out
can't
both.
have those same people sign another one?
No,
Okay.
no. If it, once it's in, yeah,
Sharon? Can we change the subject?
absolutely.
Perfect. Can we talk about secure borders and illegal immigration, and what is your position on securing the borders and having illegal immigrants? What do you do with them?
Yeah. One of the issues that in higher education we dealt with so much was, are the illegal immigrants going to be treated as in-state students or out-of-state students? And yeah, that bothers me.
I have a real problem with illegal immigrants. There's no such thing as an illegal immigrant. They're either legal or they're illegal aliens.
Okay. Good.
Just one of my pet peeves. They're illegal aliens.
Okay, I'll try to remember to use that terminology. So, anyway, that was a big issue in higher education. And on our campus, we had a tremendous number of illegal aliens there because they were working on the farms. And they were essential, in fact, by the opinion of many farmers. But the decision was initially made there that that would be consistent with my perspective, that they would not get in-state tuition when the young student from Nevada would be out of state. So, you know, it was a difficult one for the community to deal with though. And those kinds of things typically are community decisions. I think one of the interesting cases now is the one with Arizona, which we can talk about too if you wish. But when I think about, do we need new laws right now? My perception would be, let's just enforce what we've got first. Let's make right what we have first, because we can go a long way.
Add a little bit to that. As somebody who's worked with many immigration attorneys, I've worked with several of them and work a lot with immigrants, both legal and illegal. I think the law, the federal immigration law, the way it is right now, and just the law itself, not the enforcement, I believe it was designed never to be enforced because of the way it works. Okay, so basically, I think if you are elected, a lot of the problem can be solved by reworking the laws a bit, so that it's not such. I mean, if you want to go, I can go into details. I mean, about the specific instances of specific laws. The idea where it's almost impossible to get here illegally, but there's no punishment for coming here illegally.
Right.
Is so much against logic, where basically you put so many roadblocks to go in the right way,
Yeah.
but no roadblocks to come in the wrong way is and then this is all legal. It's not enforcement. You know, crossing the border is just a Class B misdemeanor. You know, is not like it's a felony, and being here illegally is not even a crime at all if you came here under a tourist visa or a proper visa. But at the same time, if you wanted to come here illegally, where you have to wait 20 years,
Yeah.
it just makes no sense for the law itself. And so I would say, if you're elected to Congress, a way to solve the problem, at least mitigate it, is to make the law, you can make it severe, but make it straightforward.
Mhm.
If it's, right now, it's not straightforward.
Mhm.
And it's not, any law, just like tax law, well, my specialty is tax law. The fact that it's not straightforward means people break it unknowingly all the time. You know, you know, because unless you're an expert at tax law, I'm sure everybody here has broken tax law before. But
Unknowingly.
Unknowingly, and this, I mean, unknowingly.
And thank you, and I would want to speak with you about
But there's a really
the areas for correcting the law.
complicated, I mean, stuff, I mean, I tell you, I mean,
Yeah.
I mean, I can tell you, I don't know if I want to go in here, but I can tell you, you know, personal stories that
I would-
just make no sense
I would
logically.
appreciate that, yeah. And then E-Verify is the same way when you, are any of you farmers where you've got an E-Verify issue?
Kurt the farmer.
No, he owns a tractor, and that's about the extent.
Have
Does he
you,
even live in Oregon anymore?
He lives in Connecticut.
so back to the immigration, do you all run into issues with E-Verify? And do you try to use it, or what, how do you feel about that?
We try and use it, but it's kind of a waste of time.
Yeah, yeah. Well, one of the things that I oversaw in my prior work was students having IT curriculum that was mapped to the curriculum of the national defense groups, the Homeland Security groups, the Department of Treasury, all of the federal departments that have need for national security kinds of issues. And trying to keep those clear and secure and so on is quite a job. But the problems with E-Verify, I swear, could be dealt with by those students, because they wanted, many groups, including some farmers, have the desire for E-Verify to be used in the field. And right now, it can't be. They have to go back to where their computer is, work with the names and so on of the people that they have, and it's not a friendly program at all. There's no reason it couldn't be done just as well in that application as it is in the military, and has been for ages, for many, many years, where there was marvelous field use of the programs. So there are things that can be fixed, I think, without just completely overhauling it. I went to the Center for Immigration Policy and saw pictures across the border. I was amazed at the spaces that were just open for so many miles, and spaces where any little person, big person, animal, you name it, could get through with no problem at all. And so given that, it's secure borders is a clear beginning. And if we have that in place, then we've come a long way. So without that, where are we going to be?
I have just another comment on that. I know when I was a kid, I used to work on farms. I mean, did anybody else work on farms?
Mm-hmm.
If any farmer here tried to hire a kid to work on the farm, the way I understand Oregon laws, would probably go to jail for hiring them to work on the farm. That might be a big solution to, because kids are the natural, they can work long hours. I know I did when I was a kid, my grandfather's farm.
Yeah, but now we have to protect.
I'm just saying that might be a problem. That might reduce the demand for agricultural seasonal labor when
I see what
it
you're saying.
used to be.
Yeah,
They used to let kids out of school early so they could harvest at the harvest time.
yeah, yeah.
But
And
right
then
now you
there's,
go to jail in Oregon if you try to hire a kid.
and then there's more mechanical that's possible in some areas too. And programs for being able to share equipment in different ways than we do right now. So it's such a major concern, and there are so many things that we can do about it, and ignoring them is not one of them.
Can I change the subject again?
Yes?
Okay, perfect. One of the first things that Kurt Schrader did when he went back to Congress is that he, well, as a farmer, he traded in his pickup truck for a Prius so that he could be back with the green crowd and he could manage his farm from the front seat of a green car. So, but then he promptly voted for Obama's cap and trade scheme. And so, which I believe causes escalating energy prices to every household in the state of Oregon, if not the country. So, how do you feel about cap and trade? What would you know, well, I guess, but so that we can get it on record here for this guy here, you know, we'll probably say that you're against cap and trade, but there's also, I'm also of the opinion that the whole global warming thing is, man-made global warming is a huge scam and a money-making mechanism for Al Gore. How do you feel about that?
The money-making for Al Gore, I don't know. But the charges that it is caused by humans are dubious from a scientific point of view. So this is a science issue. This isn't a political issue. Let the scientists figure out all the factors from volcanoes and everything else that cause global warming. Let the scientists figure out why the Antarctica is growing in ice and not warming at this, you know, at this time at all. In fact, it appears to be the opposite as it grows in magnitude. Let the scientists figure that out. I don't think our politicians are capable of it. So get it out of the political arena. And it's got to be worldwide. It can't be something that is decided in Oregon or decided in the U.S. It's got to be worldwide, or it doesn't matter what steps we would take for ourselves. So, because we know, I mean, if you've ever been to China, Korea, Thailand, any of the places where pollution is what it is and may contribute in some way to the global warming, you know that it has got to be a worldwide issue for anyone who believes that there is an ounce of human cause to the global warming in there. And there may be, you know, the scientists are going to tell us, right?
So do you think that we're getting a good return on our tax dollar investments through such entities as Solyndra, the wind farms that we're building?
Yeah, no. And I mean, it's just so out of kilter, isn't it? So out of kilter to be pouring money down that rat hole. And as I see what Jerry Brown has done in California with his hopes, now this would be a state issue, but his hopes were that he could have statewide cap and trade and use the proceeds from that to the government to fill a part of their budget deficit hole. And I think, oh man, what in the world is your reasoning here? Because he picks this arbitrary number, right, that is a fair amount of global warming and a fair amount of pollution and so on. What does that number mean? Nothing. Absolutely nothing. It's just a number that he picked. So then people can buy up to that certain amount and put the money in the government coffers. It makes absolutely no sense, and it is totally and completely inconsistent with the belief that he professes that what he's after is to reduce global warming. He's not reducing it if he's going to just spread it around and let you buy your contribution to it. Isn't that crazy?
Yeah.
So,
Are you referring to carbon offsets?
I do think that yeah,
That's
exactly.
okay.
Exactly, yeah, yeah.
Okay, you said it was a state issue. Now, this brings me to, the Constitution has specific enumerations for what the federal government is responsible for. And because we've gotten away from the Constitution, that's why we're in the mess we're in.
Yeah, oh man.
We have unelected bureaucrats making mandates and stuff like that, but we have no ability to bring to accountability for the things they're doing.
Yep.
Where do you stand as far as the Constitution of the United States is concerned?
I could not be a stronger supporter. And the reason I said, by the way, states' rights was when I was referring to the Jerry Brown in California issue only, because he had set that up as a state policy for himself. But if there were an amendment to the Constitution, which I don't even like to think about, it would be for a balanced budget amendment. However, I think it's unlikely that we're gonna get that, and so let's just behave as if we have one. But that would be the only amendment that I could see.
Because that's what I'm saying, the Constitution has basically chained the bureaucrats down. I mean, the politicians down. But because we have allowed these laws to be passed that are unconstitutional and have not been stopped, we're in this mess. Now, my question is, it's not Republican, it's not Democrat, because Republicans have done some of this stuff too.
You're correct.
And so, you know, if we elect you back there, I mean, we elect these people and they get back there and they don't do what they say they're going to do. So that's what I'm saying. Are you going to do what you're saying you're going to do, or is this another thing where we're electing somebody and they're gonna get bought out when they get to Washington?
No, I'm not a buyout kind of person at all. And that's part of the reason I shared with you my upbringing, because I hope you can feel that in me. That's the reason I'm running. I hate this stuff. I don't like what I'm seeing any more than you like what you're seeing.
Okay, and then I have some other things here too. The Federal Reserve, because their printing money is making the value of our dollar go down. It's not the value of everything else going up, it's because the Federal Reserve is making so much money out there that, you know, if I have $5 and the Federal Reserve prints 10, then it's the Federal Reserve that's killing the value of our dollar.
I want to cheer, but let me comment on that. I think that item right there, because of the extent, which is huge, of our deficit and our debt, has the greatest potential of anything to take our liberty away.
And it's doing it.
And if other nations would not recognize the dollar, then we would really see the impact on that, because this phony money the paper money that's being printed, is not going to be accepted.
Well, India is starting to do that. They're starting to buy oil with a different currency than the dollar, so we're going to be in a world of hurt. Okay, two more things. How would you have voted on the NDAA? Do you know what that is?
Tell me.
National Defense Authorization that Obama signed the day before January 1st, where he can take any American citizen and incarcerate you without any reason, and until the conflict is over. And without a lawyer or any of this other stuff, and it's passed and it's in the books now.
And I have heard about that. I don't know enough about it.
Kurt Schrader voted for it.
Really?
He voted for it.
Let me put on.
Two senators, who are they?
Wyden and Merkley.
They both voted against it. Which I was totally surprised but pleased.
Let me get my ducks in a row on it, and I'll put it on my website that's down there, so that you'll know.
Okay, and then this next week they're voting on the internet censorship bill.
Right.
And they have 100 sponsors so far at this point. Now this internet censorship bill can take down any internet thing, from what I'm understanding, just because they deem it to be a terrorist site or something like that. And they did this about a year ago, and they took down like dental sites, things like this that have no connection to this, and this is supposed to be being voted on this next week. Where do you stand on that?
Well, you suddenly made me worried that maybe that's why my computer went out this morning.
It's interesting what a big topic this is, because GoDaddy.com came out in support of it, and they had so many people drop their service that they completely reversed it.
Now that was one that was HIPAA, that was SAPA and HIPAA. This new one is next week, and it's worse still.
I think that'd be awful.
Well, I guess my feeling is, I'm worried that we're losing a lot of our rights. You know, and we have.
No, we aren't losing them. We've lost them.
Okay, but this is even more than, I mean, we're losing the right to communicate on the internet now, and it's going to, you know, it's just getting worse and worse.
And I think one person thinking they can go to the government and changing it, when every time we send people, it just seems to get deeper in the hole, and it's really discouraging. It really is discouraging.
It is. I agree. I totally agree. And when it gets into our individual liberties, then we've got to do something about it. I think that if, you know, in the freshman Congress this time, in 2010, there were 40% of them who were new and had never run for office. And when you ask them why are they doing it, this was largely the reason. because they were fed up with it, and this is where you're getting people who are thinking differently. When we get enough of them, we can do something. And we gotta have that Ronald Reagan that optimism that says we can band together and do some things to make it better. I think we've got to do that. We've got to do it for our kids and our grandkids.
What you're talking about is false leadership, and that's what.
We don't have.
Well, I think that people have a point where they get bought out, you know, and they have a price. You meet this level and I'll vote whatever way you want.
Yeah, that's false
Kurt
leadership.
Schrader did that. Schrader did it, yeah.
The problem, and she's absolutely right about people going to Congress with these great ideas, and how they're going to make these changes. But I've learned so much because my wife works for Senator Alan Olson, who's just walking in here. And I can tell you what we hear from him all the time is this. There are people who have really good ideas and some good bills, and they want to consolidate government and reduce government, but when the other side has the majority, you can't get it out of committee.
Yeah, I know.
That's the stinky part.
Yeah.
So what you're saying is now all these freshmen who took over the House this past year, so now the House has a Republican majority. Hopefully we'll have a Senate majority, and we can push, not that the Republicans in this room or anywhere want to have a lot of bills, because we don't.
Right.
But if we do want to have a lot of bills that will shrink government and consolidate and reduce the restrictions and to do some of those things.
Yeah.
But if we can't even get them out of committee because some stupid Democrat doesn't believe in it and won't let it get out, that's why our hands are tied.
Well, it's not just Republicans though, again, we have,
Not just
Democrats that voted for this.
Well, in Oregon right now, the Democrats are stopping this from happening.
Right, but I'm just saying the Republicans that voted for this stuff too, to where we've gotten.
Yeah,
and that's where
yeah, they have.
Our 30-30 model had this for 1 year has been a relief. We just needed at least one more, or two more, or three more, right? And at the federal level, the same thing is true. We need to keep that majority in the House, but we've got to get it in the Senate too.
That's right.
Or things get stuck that shouldn't be, or they get reconfigured. One of the things that just boggles my mind is when I pick up Obamacare and read it. Have you done that? And if you haven't, I would challenge you to do it. The intrusiveness in your individual health care is unreal, unreal. And it is so complex in that every phrase refers back to section 2A and 2B and C, and don't forget why. And it's just so complicated to read, and it's how many thousand pages.
Well, that's why you had to pass it first.
Yeah,
what it said.
a la Nancy Pelosi. Yeah. And I don't like to see that money trail of Nancy Pelosi money coming to someone and then them following that kind of advice. Just don't like to see that. Yeah.
I have a question to change the subject.
Yeah.
But,
You like that, John?
what do you think about the, what do you think about federal land? I mean,
Well, you know,
You
we've got only 53% in Oregon owned by the feds.
yeah, I don't think Arizona's 80%, and
Yeah, Nevada's over 90.
yeah, I mean, I thought of the idea of raising money by
Yes.
get your debt off by selling off some of this
Yes, and save Social Security.
prime
Yes.
timberland that could be used
Yes.
where they don't, you know, I'm just in
With a
Arizona, they
sharing
had
of free
10,000
enterprise
acres go up in
and-
flames, and everybody says, oh well, whatever. But it was a private.
Do you know what he's
forest.
talking about? Yeah, with a sharing of the funds going to free enterprise and to the leaseor.
I mean, do we need?
But what we would have to be so careful of is that what the feds could use that money for would be just absolutely nailed down, right? Because what if it went to more stimulus or more this or that? It'd be a disaster.
Well, at least if you had more land in private hands, you'd have
Yeah,
less government control.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
And that's certainly a step forward.
Well,
What time do you need to be on, my friend?
You can be anywhere.
Yes, you do.
Sure, sure.
We gotta hear from you.
So I'm gonna change subjects once again. We've had some recent dust-ups about Planned Parenthood. And it's basically an abortion bill. So what is your stance on allowing the employees of Planned Parenthood to be successful doing something else?
Well, the main role that the House has with any abortion issue is with funding, right? I do not support funding for abortions from governmental sources. So that's just straightforward, means if there's an agency that would commingle those funds, like Planned Parenthood, I would not support the federal money in any way being used for abortion. So it's just something that can be dealt with by the states, and I think that is probably an area for state sovereignty. And we've seen that when those funds were depleted by a state, that they would be privately funded. And if it's privately funded, it's another matter. So, but as I see it, that would be a state issue. But from the federal level, you can see where I stand. So,
what federal agencies would you defund? And is the GSA one of them?
Yeah, yeah. And let's not forget education. Okay, and because I took a look at their duties, self-described, and their budget. And I thought, well, gee, if we did away with all of this, look how many millions it would save. And I don't think was anything left except phase out of Pell Grants that I thought would probably need to be covered by another agency, unless you happen to be a real fan of No Child Left Behind, which I am not. And so I don't know if anyone in this room is, but I'm sorry if you are, because we disagree on that one.
You think it's the federal government's responsibility in charge of